Okay, so I should probably explain why I'm making this video. Because I've stopped making Guild Wars 2 content. I mean, I've only put out a couple of videos, but I have played Guild Wars 2 for years and years. Since the release date, I bought it on release date. I love the game. I sort of fell off of it because I did all the content and there wasn't any new content being pumped in, and I wasn't really interested in legendaries. So I stopped really having an opinion on Guild Wars 2. However, one of the most popular Guild Wars 2 YouTubers, Wooden Potato, is hosting a competition. And I would probably get back into the game if I won the competition, because that would be kind of cool. So, yeah, if you haven't heard of Wooden Potatoes, cool dude. I'll link his channel in the description. He's hosting this competition. He basically wants more YouTubers to create Guild Wars 2 content. So, I'm good at having an opinion on things, so I decided to have an opinion on the new expansion, Path of Fire. I want to reiterate that this is going to sound like I'm just going to shit talk Path of Fire for like 20 minutes. I'm going to have a little bit of an olive branch session at the end, so stick around for that. So, Path of Fire. Path of Fire is the second expansion. It takes place in the Alona Desert. Primary antagonist for the DLC, for those of you who aren't aware, and I feel like they kind of spoiled it, which I feel like was a bad thing, was that it's Balthazar, one of the 6 gods. I felt like that was when I was playing the Living Story, I felt like that was such a good twist, that like you're fighting a villain that isn't an Elder Dragon, because I was expecting for us to just fight Elder Dragons for months and months and months. So I like how ArenaNet is changing up the storyline. I definitely wouldn't have thought that one of the human gods would have intervened. So, you're fighting Balthazar in the desert. It's super cool. The desert looks really good. I have nothing but good things to say about the art style that Guild Wars represents with its game. I have nothing bad to say about them. The desert looks amazing. Everything that I've seen so far looks good. The new mounts look good. The new armor sets look really good. Everything looks good. What I'm not a fan of is what they're doing mechanic-wise. So I'm going to start off with the mounts. One of the big key things in this is going to be mounts. And I feel like mounts are a bad idea for a couple of reasons. First off, we already have gliding. And unless they're going to introduce flying mounts, which would make gliding obsolete, I don't see a point of implementing a mount system. If you're going to implement a ground mount system, it has to be like really good, which as it stands right now, it is not. Because one of the kickers about other games is that like there are flying mounts that you can do stuff with. That's the whole big thing with mounts nowadays, is you have Riders of Icarus, or you have Final Fantasy XIV, or even World of Warcraft did flying mounts, and it's really cool. It feels nice to fly in the sky in an MMO. But Guild Wars 2 isn't going to do that, and if they did, it would make gliding obsolete. They'd have to completely revamp the gliding system. So, that's why I think mounts aren't a good idea for one reason. Another reason that I don't like mounts is specifically because they detract from the gameplay in some way. You're losing something when ArenaNet adds mounts. And you may not think that you're losing something, but you're losing something. Because here's the kicker. Guild Wars 2 is a very fast-paced game. It's a dynamic game. You'll walk around, you'll see events that are cool, you'll be walking down the road helping some poor karma dude tend to sheep or whatever, and a dragon will start attacking the nearby village or something. Or a giant spider will start ravaging the countryside. Dynamic events like that. And the combat's dynamic. You can dodge roll. You can avoid enemies' attacks. It's not like you just sit there and you have a chance to dodge, you have a chance to block in other MMO games. It's very fast-paced. The thing that really makes it so much better than it could have been, because if it just had the combat and it was just like in a regular old MMO map, it would have been terrible. But the Guild Wars 2 maps are small, relatively small, by the way. I don't want to say small as if it's a bad thing. It's not. They're small and detailed. There's no wasted space in a Guild Wars 2 map. You walk by a cave, you look into the cave, you go, I'm gonna find something in that cave. Either a point of interest, or a vista, or an event's gonna happen in that cave, or there's a jumping puzzle. There's always something going on in the world. They don't waste space, and I like that about the Guild Wars 2 devs. It's really nice. As opposed to World of Warcraft or Final Fantasy XIV, where yeah, it's pretty some of the time it's not very pretty, but there's a lot of empty space, where there's no quest targets, where there's nothing going on. Final Fantasy XIV kind of makes this better when they have like a hidden lookout, like I forget exactly what it's called, like a scene watcher. Like you can come across, they're like almost like vistas from Guild Wars 2, except you have to like use the /lookout emote, and you'll unlock like scenic views. And World of Warcraft has excellent cinematics, so I mean, there's a give and take here. But with Guild Wars 2, the maps are small and detailed, and there's no wasted space. And that's because everything is close together. And if something isn't close together, if something's off in the distance that you need to get to, there's waypoints. And there are these teleport stones that you can just click on the map, and you'll teleport there in a couple of seconds after a loading screen. Everything is concise and fast, and you don't waste any time traveling. You don't waste any time flying on a griffin trying to get to the next quest objective, because you're done with the quest line in this map. There's nothing wasted. And that's what I really like about Guild Wars 2. If they added mounts, something bad would happen. They've said before, and again, we haven't seen a whole lot of content, so I feel kind of weird making a video and an opinion on this, because we haven't seen all the content yet. I was dubious about Heart of Thorns when it came out, but then like the actual game came out and I saw the reviews and I saw the content that it provided, and it was actually good. And I haven't seen a whole lot of Path of Fire content yet, and I feel weird giving an opinion this early in the development and this early in the release, but I feel like if I don't, somebody else is going to say this, and I'm going to lose my big moment in the spotlight. So, I'm making this video, and again, I could be totally wrong. They've said that they're going to make bigger maps, and that they may or may not remove the waypoints. And I have a couple of things about this. First off, the maps are going to be really big, apparently, which is why the mounts would be required. Because if the maps were the same size as they were in the other zones, mounts aren't really necessary. You get around decently fast enough from ley lines or gliding or jump pads and stuff like that. So the maps are obviously going to be bigger. The trade-off here is that if the maps are going to be bigger, that either the maps are going to be less detailed, which again, you're losing the detail that Guild Wars puts into their maps. You're not going to walk by a cave anymore and you're going to go, oh, there's going to be something in there. You're going to walk by a cave and go, there's probably nothing in there anymore, because I'm in the Alona Desert. And there's nothing around. The maps are sparsely decorated. Or, the maps are going to be as detailed as they were before, and in which case, you're going to have a giant map which is going to be a pain in the ass to complete. Nobody wants to do a giant desert map with 50 renown hearts and 60 vistas, you know? Map completion is already difficult enough, having to do the Heart of Thorn maps for some of those collections, that I don't think that this would be a good idea. It's a bad design flaw. On top of that, if the maps were as detailed as they were before, you'd be getting on and off your mount like every 5 seconds. You'd find a point of interest, get on your mount, walk 100 feet, and then you'd get off your mount to get another point of interest. And that's not the type of gameplay that a Guild Wars 2 player is looking for. This is why I think map mounts are a bad idea. Guild Wars 2, the dev team kind of made this better by giving the mounts travel abilities. There's 4 different mounts that they've released so far. If there's only 4 mounts, I'm kind of upset, because there should absolutely be more. But I get that mounts, especially with the unique travel abilities, they're kind of hard to program. I get that. My thing with the unique travel abilities is that they're not useful. They're not unique. Like, you have a bunny that can jump really high. Big deal. We have crystals that can do that for us in Dry Top. Why don't you just put some of those down in the map? You have a raptor that can jump really far. Cool. That's the one that everybody's going to be using, by the way. Because if it can jump really far, you're going to be able to travel distances a lot quicker. You have a hound that can like sort of blink in and out of existence that isn't useful at all in the slightest. Anything that the hound can do, the raptor or the bunny can probably do. Because I have a strong feeling that they've messed up the hound and that the hound can't go through walls. Like, it'd be cool if I would use the hound only if it could like blink through walls. But I guarantee that it can't. I guarantee that that type of development and that type of programming is way out of ArenaNet's league from what I've seen in the past, okay? And the one that I'm most interested in is the Stingray. It's like a manta ray looking, you can like float across water and it looks kind of cool. That's the one that I would probably use just because You know, you can fly across water. That's a unique travel feature. You don't really get to do that in the game a whole lot. On the other hand, I can't imagine there being a lot of lakes in the Alona Desert. So I have a feeling that the stingray pet isn't gonna be a whole lot of use in the desert. So I have my reservations about that. The stingray pet also looks kind of like the antagonist from that movie Life with Jake Gyllenhaal and Ryan Reynolds. I find that funny. Anyway, so I don't think that the mounts are a good idea. I think that the mounts are poorly executed and that ArenaNet hasn't thought them out as far as they probably think they have. I think that ArenaNet stopped looking at what they think that the players want. I just think that ArenaNet should probably put a little bit more time and innovation into the mount system. I think it'd be cool. I think it's a cool idea. I just think that it's not executed right. What if we had a sandworm that could burrow under the ground and under walls that could get to secret areas that other mounts can't because there's a wall in the way, and the surprise and it could lunge out and surprise enemies that you sneak up on with the sandworm. That'd be cool. Or how about a Mordrum or a gorilla that could like climb up vines or like the side of rocks and stuff. Add some lateral movement, you know, just like be different somehow. Just I feel like in the boardroom they were just like, well, I want to make a bunny that can jump really high, and they're just like, all right, cool, easy to program, let's go on with this. Like they didn't really put any effort into this, you know what I mean? So that's my stance on mounts. Now we're going to get to my favorite part of the DLC, which is the elite specializations. I think that as far as what I'm most interested in the new DLC goes, the elite specializations are probably what I'm most invested in at this point. Because I think that elite specializations are one of the greatest things that ArenaNet ever came up with. Like in other MMOs, they add new classes. They add jobs. They like if I play a lot of Final Fantasy 14, so I'm familiar with that system. Other MMOs just add classes, you know what I mean? But ArenaNet decided, hey, we already have 9 classes. We have 3 in each light, medium, and heavy armor category. Why not just expand the classes that we have? Why not just make the professions better by adding elite specializations? And I think that's a good idea. I haven't seen a whole lot of other games or MMOs do that. So, elite specializations are a good thing in my opinion. I think that they should have more of them. Which, obviously they're going to make more of them with each DLC, I get that. The elite specializations in Path of Fire, some of them are really cool, some of them are really bad. Some of the really bad ones are like the Thief, the Deadeye Marksman or whatever. It's just a thief with a sniper rifle, which I'm kind of upset by. Like, I want a thief that can, like, do cool stuff. I want a thief that can, like, create shadow clones, and you can teleport to eat any of the shadow clones, and it'll like a Mesmer can do that. Why can't a thief do that? You know what I mean? Or a thief that can, like, steal skills off of an enemy's category. Like, I understand the steal profession mechanic being what it is against, like, PvE enemies. Because how the steal works is that you hit F1, or your profession mechanic, and you hit an enemy, and you'll steal a random skill depending on what the enemy is. If it's a bird, you may steal an invisibility skill where you can throw feathers at your feet and become cloaked. Or you may be able to throw a glob of ectoplasm. It's random. But I want to, like, if you're in PvP or you're fighting against other players or, like, certain enemies, I wish you could steal their skills. So that way they become unable to use those skills for a short while. I think that would add a lot more diversity and make thieves a lot more interesting in PvP. Because I've played a lot of PvP. I hit legendary rank. So, that's my thought on the Deadeye. I don't know why that's a thing. I don't know why that was, hey, let's give the thief a sniper rifle, and that was just it. The other thing that I was interested in is the engineer with the hollow smith, I think is what it's called. I don't know. I'm just looking at Audacity. I don't have the sheet of elite specializations, so I may miss a few. But just a couple of them stand out to me. The engineer seemed really good on paper. When they were explaining the engineer on the video, they were like, it's a engineer that can create holograms of other weapons, and I was thinking of like an engineer that could like conjure weapons like an elementalist could. Just a temporary weapon conjuring. But that's not what it is at all. And I was really upset with like how they described it and how different it actually was from what they had described. So I'm not interested in the engineer really. I think that as far as like the engineer goes, the scrapper is still going to be way on top. Some of the elite specializations are really cool. The Scourge I'm really interested in. It's like a Mesmer-esque necromancer that can summon shades, and it's support-centered, which is really interesting to me. I was interested to see that like the necromancer became a support elite specialization. That was interesting to me. The Spellbreaker was cool, I guess. It was you can like absorb damage and counter it back to your enemies, which was cool. What my two favorite things in this are going to be the Weaver, which is the elementalist that is able to combine attunements. They can attune to both air and water at the same time, or fire and earth, which is really interesting to me. Or the Soul Beast, which is the ranger that can like merge with their pets, which was interesting to me. That was a take on the ranger that I didn't even think of. So that surprised me. I was like, that's actually like really cool, merging with your pet. So the elite specializations, some of them are really cool, some of them are really bad. And again, we haven't seen them in PvP. They're not released until next week for PvP, so I'm not sure how they're going to be. I'm just saying that some of them don't look as well thought out as the others are. The last thing that I'm going to touch extensively on is the guild hall. They're adding a new guild hall, which I think that they should have been doing before. I can't imagine guild halls being that difficult to implement, because they're just big zones that you can detail, sort of. Like, I can't imagine, I don't know why there's only 2 guild halls available with Heart of Thorns. There should have been like at least 3 or 4. Because the Gilded Hollow looks terrible. Nobody wants to live in a golden city. And it's just big. That's the reason why everybody chooses the Gilded Hollow. But I prefer the Lost Precipice. It's just really small. It has a small skybox, so you can't really build as extensively as you could before with the Gilded Hollow. But this new Guild Hall looks cool. It looks different. It looks unique and interesting as opposed to the jungle that we had before. I just wish that we had more Guild Halls before. You know, I wish that we had more variety with the Guild Hall, because claiming a Guild Hall is cool. It's important. So you should also be able to have more than one guild hall. I'm just saying, I'm pointing that out as a fact. If you max out a guild hall, you should be able to claim other ones. That's all I'm saying. So, on top of all this other content that they've produced before, there's new armor sets, there's new weapon sets, there's a new story. I assume it's going to be 10 to 15 hours long, because that's how long it took me to beat Heart of Thorns. I hope it's longer, because I loved Heart of Thorns, by the way. Like, it was started off slow, but like it really ramped up, and I actually enjoyed playing Heart of Thorns, and the rewards were really cool. You get a lot of interesting and unique skins for playing Heart of Thorns. I just want there to be more story content. I just don't want I just don't want the developers to focus on legendaries, and I don't want them to focus on appealing to older veteran players. I want them to make more story content for people who actually want to play the game and aren't just done with everything. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's a thin line between appeasing the veteran players and appeasing the newer players and trying to draw in more people. So I don't know. I don't know a whole lot about that. I don't really have an opinion on that. I'm just saying that it would be nice if I had more story content. So I assume the story is going to be interesting. I like the Heart of Thorns one. They're adding a bounty system, which I don't even know how it works. I haven't heard a whole lot about it, and I haven't even played the free-to-play access this weekend. But it looks interesting. And there's a couple of other things. The music sounds good. There's also the whole nostalgia factor. You went to the Alona Desert in the first game. I assume that there's going to be at least a POI or a Vista or a point of power for the Augury Rock or some of the other landmarks that you saw in the first game. That would be kind of cool. It's just, I don't know. This is going to get a little opinionated here. Everything that I've said before, I've tried to stay neutral with, okay? Before I go into my opinions, I absolutely think that if I was still playing Guild Wars 2 and I hadn't switched over to other games, if I hadn't gotten back into Smite, if I hadn't started playing Final Fantasy XIV, I probably would buy Path of Fire. If I still had friends that played it, I would probably buy Path of Fire just because there's enough content that it's worth $60 that it's probably going to be priced at when it comes out. Would I pre-order it and get the deluxe edition? Probably not. There isn't a whole lot in there. But I would definitely buy the base DLC. It's good enough for that. Saying that, I just didn't expect this to be the direction that Arena was going to go. After the Maguma jungle, I was expecting them to start ramping it up. I was expecting us to be able to go into the northern mountains, into the Shiver Peaks, like North Shiver Peaks, by the way, like farther than we did in the Bitterfrost Frontier in the Living Story. I wanted to like really like go into the mountains or something, but they just decided to go back to the desert, which I get. There has to be something interesting, because the jungle felt dangerous. It felt like you were out of your zone. But we've been in deserts before. We've been in Fireheart Rise. We've been in some of the places up in Ascalon that are kind of desert. You know what I mean? So we're not exactly out of our environment in the desert, and so I can't expect them pulling the whole cliche. Oh, the entire pack showed up and we all got fucked because we didn't understand what was going on. I can't imagine they can pull that excuse again. Like, I understand that. That was an interesting turn for us to take down an Elder Dragon and immediately get put in our place when we entered the jungle and we got shot down by Mordramoth. That was kind of cool. It was like, wow, okay, maybe these Elder Dragons aren't pansies. They're not going to be pushovers. But, like, the desert, I can't imagine fighting Balthazar is going to be as interesting as it's going to be fighting a dragon. Because, yeah, he's a god, but he's also humanoid. When you fight a giant dragon, there's a bit of a detachment there. Like, whenever you fight an Elder Dragon, you don't fight them on foot. You don't fight them with swords and shields. You fight them with cannons and lasers and airships. Because no mortal could fight an Elder Dragon. But I mean, we've seen in the in the Living Story before, you can hold your own against Balthazar. Like, it wouldn't be unheard of. We're probably going to end up fighting Balthazar on foot, which is going to be like kind of upsetting because he's going to be made out to be this big villain, and then we're just going to beat him up. You know what I mean? I don't know. It wasn't what I was expecting for ArenaNet to do at this point. I was expecting bigger areas. I was really excited for them to do the underwater Elder Dragon. I think that would be really cool, is for them to actually revamp the underwater combat and to like put us into the unending sea. I think that would be really cool for us to, like, just giant open oceans. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe I'm expecting too much. But I don't know. That's the video. I don't know. I was trying to write a script for this and I couldn't. It felt weird. I hate doing scripted content, so I've improv this off the top of my head. So again, that's just my opinion. I would buy it if I was still into Guild Wars 2, but as it stands now, this is just me submitting my entry for the contest. Absolutely, if you're still into Guild Wars 2, Path of Fire is definitely worth picking up, but it's not enough to get me back into the game. I have 1,000 hours in the game. I've hit Legendary in PvP. I've done all the raids. I have my Legendary armor. I stopped playing a couple months ago, and it doesn't feel like Path of Fire is enough to get me back into the game. So, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts? Leave a comment. So, thanks for watching.